Well, welcome to the Bay Games 2021 live update show. I'm your host, Ed Morrison, coming to you from a locked down Melbourne. I hope you're well wherever you are joining us from. Amidst the chaos that is the pandemic right now, we thought it only appropriate to jump on and address some questions that we know might be playing on athletes and spectators' minds alike. Few industries have been impacted over the last 18 months as much as those involved in large public events. Not to mention pop-up events in public spaces, drawing on athletes from all around Australia and internationally, like the Bay Games does. A man who knows only too well about this is, of course, the director of the Bay Games, and I'm speaking of Mr. Matt Locke, and he joins us now from Jervis Bay. Matt, good evening.
Hi, Ed. It's good to be here. As I was listening to you speak, I've missed this. I've missed everything about the Bay Games, and I've missed this.
Me too, mate. I was just thinking this feels like old times, teeing up an online conference and speaking out to all the fans and athletes. So it's nice to be here this evening. And you're keeping well in Jervis Bay?
Yeah, absolutely. Not going to play any small violins. We're only more recently into, I guess, a more restricted lockdown. Absolutely mindful of what everyone in Sydney and Melbourne and some other locations have been and are going through. So we're doing okay in Jervis Bay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a fair bit to get through, Matt. So I think it might be appropriate that we just launch in. And I know we've got a few different areas to cover. So I think if I can be as blunt as to ask, what's the plan at the moment, given the lockdowns in New South Wales and Victoria? What's the plan for the Bay Games 2021?
Yeah, absolutely. So the burning question, we've been holding off, crossing our fingers and toes that things would improve. I think what's obvious is even though the vaccination rates are improving, so there is light at the end of the tunnel, it's all taken far longer than any of us would have liked. I like to think that we've made the decision, but in reality, the decision's been made for us. We will have to postpone the Bay Games and move it until November 2022. So yet again, the Bay Games falls foul of the pandemic. And yeah, I mean, major disruption for all the athletes who had been hoping for it, training for it, planning for it. And of course, so many others who are impacted by that. But it really is a decision that's kind of out of our hands. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. But I mean, October is forecast to be the worst month so far. That was announced today by our Premier. We're not even in September yet. So yeah, even though the idea of lockdown restrictions easing during October, that's certainly what we're being told. The reality is that's literally a handful of weeks away from when the Bay Games was planned to go ahead.
Yeah, and of course that's disappointing news for all involved. But as you said, I think people won't be surprised that this is the move that had to be made. And as you said, the decision was somewhat made for you, if not entirely made for you, by the circumstances. Just to discuss some further details around the plans and where we're shifting to, I noticed that you said that we'll be moving it to November or late 2022, I should say. Was there a reason around choosing 12 months forward on and not necessarily postponing to sort of March or April?
Yeah, absolutely. When this happened last year, most people will know that we did indeed say, well, all right, let's push it out. Let's try for it in March. And of course, Northern Beaches kind of kicked off just before Christmas and scuppered the plans, really. Not to blame them, of course. But that, yeah, it was interesting. It was a lesson for us as well. There's a lot of moving parts to a sort of pop-up event like the Bay Games. And in fact, it was kind of a scramble when we made the decision to run the Unstoppable version of the Bay Games and shift the in-person event to March. I think that was done with the best of intentions and all the right spirit. And we would have been able to deliver that, of course. But even though we couldn't, it gave us clear insights into actually quite what's involved to move an event to a totally different time of year. And in fact, was only, I guess, 4, 5, 6 months away, maybe 5 months, I think, at the time when we made that decision. The reality is, given, I mean, the COVID situation, even though, again, with the vaccination rates improving, I mean, fingers crossed, we're in a better position by Christmas onwards. But right now, it would be really hard to commit again to trying to run the event at a different time of year. And then, of course, it conjures up the question, well, then do we run another one in November? And we're a small organization trying to run 2 Bay Games in the same year. That's not a small undertaking, I have to say. So we've taken the decision, and with a bit of advice as well from in discussion with Destination New South Wales, who have been amazing, with Shoalhaven City Council, who have been amazing. We basically all believe that the right decision is to basically postpone it by 12 months, which means the 11th, 12th and 13th of November next year is when we hope to have the Bay Games, and I tell you, it'll be a big one.
Yeah, and I think people will be penciling those dates in their diary as we speak. I guess if the last 18 months has taught us anything, it's that 5 or 6 months doesn't actually feel like that far away once you're moving closer towards it. So I think everyone will understand November 2022 being the date of the new Bay Games, or that's where it's being postponed to, I should say. I think it's appropriate for our athletes for us to ask a few logistical questions. Let's talk about existing registrations who registered for this year's Bay Games. What's going to happen to that type of thing?
Well, you know what, Ed, it's not only those who registered this year. We rolled over from last year. So we have,
last year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? So we've got athletes who have been amazing and stayed with us since early last year, if not even those who went into the Fearless First category, might be even longer. So we have a long tail, let's say, in terms of registrations, but for sure, we will roll those forward into next year's Bay Games. And when we're postponing the event, we're not cancelling the event. And for an organisation the size of ours, the way we'll handle that is to roll all registrations forward to the event in November 2022. So no one needs to do anything. That will happen automatically as it did last year. And certainly there'll be some comms go out, some emails that go out about that, just to confirm for those who perhaps have missed this on the social channels or on our website. But there'll be some emails around that. But you don't have to do anything other than keep training and keep looking forward to what will be an amazing event.
Now, on continuing training, and by the way, I think there was a collective sigh of relief then from all athletes who have got their registrations in from 2020 and 2021. But on continuing training, I know that this gives you time to refine aspects of the event. The workout's going to be the same? Should athletes continue to prep for the same workouts that they've been prepping for?
Now, I know there's going to be some athletes watching this praying to whatever God they believe in, that that event one will change, and that, okay, we won't do the 5K run for the advanced athlete. But I'm delighted to confirm that the workouts will stay the same. So because we're not going to run an unstoppable version of the Bay Games this year, I mean, we did that last year, and as a result, we kind of used some of the workouts that had been scheduled for last year's Bay Games, and therefore,
sure,
with Will and the team from the program, we basically decided to therefore scrap what was there and to instead start again with a brand new set of workouts. Because we won't be running an unstoppable version of the Bay Games this year, therefore we have no reason to rewrite them. And so I guess we can look forward to some amazing PBs next year, because everyone will have had so much lead-in and time to prepare for those workouts.
You said that with a fairly nasty grin when you knew that the athletes would still be having to run 5 kilometers. Just on the moving parts of the event, and I think it's great that the workouts are staying the same. I think people have been working towards that, and they can continue to work towards that. Have there been aspects of the event that you've had time to reflect on and refine, given that it has been postponed several times? I imagine one of the silver linings may be that you've had an opportunity to think through certain things and level them up in this time.
Yeah, no question. Across different aspects of the event, from software providers to, for sure, again, to mention Will and the team from the program, no question, programming for an event like the Bay Games It is different, of course, from programming a daily workout. And it's interesting when you get into the details of programming for an event like this. Obviously, the space and geography that you have, what you're allowed to do, what equipment is available, what equipment can be made available, and we certainly each year, we pride ourselves in not only growing the event and enhancing the experience for our athletes, but as well trying to bring in some diversity, something that perhaps they don't get to do all day every day in their training, and certainly introducing new skills. And certainly one of the things that we'd introduced for this year, which of course therefore will be next year, is the rope climbs, for example. And I have to say, there's a lesson learned in that. I mean, the rope climbs will be there, but there's so much work gone into making that a reality, actually. And no regrets, but certainly Pat McGill, who's handling logistics for us, has done an amazing job with his engineering background and working with the suppliers. And really, because of course, if we're going to put up a temporary structure and have people climbing ropes on it, then of course it has to be an engineered solution, and it has to be signed off and be deemed safe by the various parties involved. So what sounds really simple, like let's do some rope climbs, actually in an environment which is ultimately a public space, and it's sort of a temporary structure is going to be erected that's having human life hanging off it. Those sorts of things. There's so much time and effort that goes into that, and no problem. I mean, that's what we do at the end of the day. But yeah, certainly it's the devil is in the details, and that's just one example of some of the considerations that. You say as we go along, we live and we learn. I mean, certainly we do a detailed lessons learned sort of wash up, if you like, after every event that we do. You know that, Ed, you've been involved. And Jim and the team from Undefined Media who are helping to run this tonight, they also have been heavily involved in that. So, I mean, that's all part of the process. And so, yes, there's been lots of areas where we can refine and polish as we go. And for sure, when we're able to run the next in-person event, which of course we hope is November next year, there'll be more lessons learned as well. And the trick is, of course, to learn those lessons and evolve.
I'm already got images of people climbing up ropes in November 22 on my head, so I'm looking forward to it already. Hey, Matt, I've got to put forward to you that as a gym owner, when lockdowns have happened and logistically I've had to do things with my business to make it operate, often I think that there's people outside who would have very little idea of some of the very finicky and particular things that have to be done in that scenario. I can only imagine what it's like for a big event in a public space like yours. Can you give us some insight? What have been some of the really challenging things involved with continually postponing this, and what partners have you had to work with, and who's been affected? Because it's a big operation, and I imagine there's a lot of communication that you'll need to do now that you've made this decision to postpone for a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, quite genuinely, I speak for the team as well, that our first thoughts for sure are for the athletes who have been training for and looking forward to this event at this time of year, especially after such a crappy sort of 18 months. It was, it's something sort of light at the end of the tunnel, if you like. I know there's a lot of athletes this year, it's their first event. And so a really big step up for them. So we're disappointed for everyone who was going to compete this year. Disappointed for Lifeline Australia and Nowra Culburra Surf Club, because for sure they ultimately, we pay for calls at Lifeline and we pay for various things at the surf club, but nippers, boards, and sort of life-preserving equipment. And even though we'll still do that, we still do that with every registration. Of course, we have had registrations, and so they won't lose out entirely. But we had all sorts of things planned for, particularly on the Saturday night of the Bay Games weekend, which will now defer the benefit that those organisations will get. And then on a more local level, certainly when it comes to, I've mentioned already Shoalhaven City Council, Destination New South Wales, both government organisations, who I have to say, they do an amazing job. They have whole teams that help take care of supporting event organisers like us, and they've just been amazing throughout this whole process. But we also deal with and have to get permits from Jervis Bay Marine Parks, Service New South Wales, the New South Wales Police, the Mayor's Office, and so on. So for sure, they're all contact partners at some level in this whole process, and certainly will be when we think about obviously now changing the dates. It's disappointing for all of the local businesses who will lose out. I mean, it's been a tough 18 months so far for everyone, of course, but on a local level, we had the bushfires immediately before that. And so we're acutely aware here of the impact on all of the local businesses. And, we're active members of the Chamber of Commerce here. And, we see it and we feel it. But if you think about if we're not going to have a pop-up event in November, then all of the infrastructure for that isn't required. So Shoalhaven Party Hire, all the marquees and all of that infrastructure, they lose that business. All of the food vendors like the Husky Pub, Five Little Pigs, Pilgrims, Salty Joe's, Cheeky Tacos, really local businesses who simply will not benefit from the event. Of course, you've got the retail vendors and the sponsors who also have been planning and spending money, time and energy on being here in November. And they're also businesses who are already struggling. So accommodation providers, all the other local restaurants. I mean, think about Husky Bayside Resort, the motel next to the park, who's a massive supporter, Pete and his team, huge supporters of the Bay Games. Obviously, they're sitting empty like everyone else at the moment. And the list goes on, really. I mean, you've got Undefined Media, who are with us tonight, MC Visuals, who support them, certainly with their drones during the event. With Tadas, of course, who takes the amazing photographs that we have each year. Jazz, the amazing DJ spinning the decks. All local, well, some local, but all small businesses who are directly impacted. And of course, if I think, I mentioned Lifeline Australia already, there's people like Elise, Khan Porter, Dave Harvey, Peter Day, who had all already factored into their calendars to be here to support the Celebrity Slam Down on Saturday night in support of Lifeline and the Surf Club. So I'm sure there are more, but those are the ones which certainly came to mind right now in the moment. I should mention Elite Energy, who for sure are very supportive of our event and have been all along, who control barriers and the sound systems and so on. So really, there's so many touch points for an event like this. And I finished that list with coming back to kind of heartbroken on behalf of all the athletes who were gearing up and looking forward to sort of smashing and splashing their way through Jervis Bay. But I take heart in the knowledge that we've put a lot of effort into this year in terms of planning for this year to make it just more amazing than ever. And I guess every cloud has a silver lining. We have now more time to make sure that 2022, when we can operate, is just next level beyond that again. So we'll continue to evolve and grow, even though we can't actually run the event this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as you mentioned all those names in that list, and I know there's probably more, but it felt like a long list. It's always important to remember that when you see something like an event cancelled on the news or whatever it is due to the restrictions, there's a lot of real human lives that are affected by that. And I know that everyone's going to come back in 2022, but it's acknowledging those folks that were going to have business involved in something like the Bay Games and now have to wait until 2022. So I always think you do a terrific job of honouring those people and valuing their. Before we move on, Matt, I suppose, is there anyone, I think you've almost already done it with that list you said before, is there anybody that you'd like to thank in particular or any message that perhaps you'd like to leave the Bay Games community and the Bay Games athletes with?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've mentioned a lot of people already. What I would like to do is honour our team. Starting with Alethea, who, as you know, is our head judge, who just is super supportive every step of the way. And then, of course, we have Lisa here at HQ. We have Monica handling socials all the way in Portugal, probably watching this right now. Hi, Monica. We have some unsung heroes, let me tell you, Ray and Pat, and an army of sort of crew and judges who are all locked in for this year. And I've mentioned as well, Will Henker and the team at the program. They've just moved. They've just rolled with us every step of the way, never questioning what we're doing, just being supportive at every step. So also I have to say a massive shout out to IT Basecamp, who, again, unsung heroes, talk about them. So everything to do with our website and the web app we have for our workplace program, they're an important part of our business, and they've been such a solid supporter of the business from day one, and that's deeply appreciated. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my wife, Nerida, of course, co-founder of the Bay Games, and someone who rides the emotional roller coaster along with me and the rest of the team every step of the way. And right now she's at work at theatre at Nowra Hospital, but you can be sure she gets the unfiltered raw version of every emotion. So thanks to her, and of course to all our sponsors, companies like Timebirds. Just amazing support that they provide. And I have to say, Timebirds in particular, we're really leaning in this year and looking to be a big part of the in-person event. And I'm really pleased to confirm that they have confirmed that they absolutely will be here alongside us all and all of the athletes next year as well. So my thanks to everyone, including Shoalhaven City Council and Destination New South Wales.
Well, I'll add one that you can't give, and that is, of course, to yourself, Matt. So thank you for your leadership throughout the last few years, and I know that it's in time for you and the organisation, but I speak on behalf of the games community when I say we are looking forward already to November 2022. All right, folks, well, you've heard it here. The Bay Games is postponed till November 2022. Athletes and partners should look out for communication in their inboxes. Until then, be by example, and we will see you in 2022.